like to welcome you and just say that we are looking forward to our presenters sharing today. Our first presentation will be coming from AmeriCorps, and that will be by Amanda Cochran and Tiko Kashi. Our second presentation will be from the Environmental Protection Agency, and it will come from Christopher Shima and his colleague Morgan Capella. That will be followed by the Economic Development Administration, and that will be Francis Takishi. And then finally, we will have the Small Business Administration, and that presentation will come from Carrie Ellenwood. And I'm going to start off by just turning over to AmeriCorps.
All right. Thank you, Danette. Thank you, Julius. And good morning or good afternoon to everybody, wherever you're calling in from today. It looks like we've got a good group of folks coming from all across the country. So my name is Takeo Kishi, and I am calling in from Sacramento today. I'm an assistant program director for AmeriCorps National Civilian and Community Corps out here in the Pacific region, and I will pass it off to my colleague who's co-hosting today to introduce herself.
Hi, everybody. My name is Amanda Cochran, and I am also an assistant program director for the AmeriCorps NCCZ Pacific region. We're so excited to join you today.
Okay. Well, let's jump into it. So our agenda for today, we've condensed our talk into a nice little succinct 12 to 15 minute talk. We're just going to go over AmeriCorps and NCCZ, general overview, who can partner with us, what types of organizations, and what is required to partner with us. And then we'll do a little bit of timeline and what that application looks like. And as Julius mentioned, if you have questions, you can drop them in the chat and we might be able to get to those. Otherwise, stick around after all four groups have gone today. We'll be able to do some Q&A. Okay, so just a primer on AmeriCorps. You might have seen us listed on the agenda as the CNCS Corporation for National and Community Service. That is our old name. We are the same federal agency, but we have officially rebranded as, simply put, AmeriCorps. However, AmeriCorps has a lot of different branches to it. As you can see, we have the AmeriCorps Senior Program with RSVP, Senior Companions, and some other programs under it. But under our main AmeriCorps branch, there are 3 streams of service. State and national is primarily a grants program administered state by state. VISTA, some of you are probably familiar with. I bet a lot of you, that's usually 1 or 2 corps members doing capacity building work in poverty reduction areas. And then we are presenting today from NCCZ, National Civilian Community Corps. And the difference between us and these other programs is that we recruit, select, train, and send out entire teams of 8 to 12 folks that serve communities across our region. So what is our region? Today, Amanda and I are calling in from the Pacific region, and you can see our 9-state territory over here on the left. However, we don't have our colleagues on today from the other regions, but I saw a lot of you calling in from these other states represented. So as we present today, a lot of this information carries over, except for maybe dates and deadlines. That varies region to region, but if you would like to get connected with our colleagues in the other regions, let us know. Send us an email. We'll put our information in the chat, or drop your email in and we'll get you connected. Okay, so simply put, our mission is to strengthen communities and develop leaders through direct team-based national and community service. So we really look at it as twofold. One, strengthening communities. So how can we support your promise zone or your organization or your community? And 2, how are we supporting our core members through this process? How are we helping them develop as leaders? And I want to highlight the important parts of our program here, this direct and team-based service aspect. So the basics, what I mean by direct and team-based. So I want you to think about a team, not 1 or 2 people coming out, but 8 or 12 people coming out to serve you. And these are all core members that are 18 to 26 years old. They come with one team leader who's a core member that has had additional training. There's no age limit for that team leader, but they're a team. They're team-based, and it's a residential program. So they're living together, they're working together, they're traveling together. They are together for the duration of this program. And a team will serve a whole service year, basically from November through June, but a typical project goes anywhere from 3 weeks on the shorter end all the way up to a 12-week project. And again, like I said, we're covering those 9 states on the West, but we are in all 50 states. Okay, so in terms of who is represented in our NCCC core, we recruit nationally. So folks come from all across the country. Our age range is 18 to 26 years old. We do get a lot of folks who have recently graduated college. We also get a lot of folks who have just graduated from high school. So, you know, a bit of range in experience and age. We like to say that, you know, folks are typically really eager. People who join our program really want to serve, but they don't necessarily come in with a high level of experience in something like nonprofit management or construction work. But they come in with a real interest to learn how to do that. And we really count on our sponsors to partner with us to help provide that. Okay, so I will turn it over next to Amanda, and she'll get in a little bit more of who we work with and what we provide our members. Amanda.
Thanks, Takeo. So as Takeo said earlier, our mission is really 2 parts. So not only do we want to serve communities, but we really want to develop these leaders, the members that are serving in our program. So there are some great benefits that they get from serving with us. Of course, it's a resume builder. They get to experience a lot of different projects, work with potentially a variety of organizations, gain a lot of skills along the way, and helping them kind of figure out what maybe they want to do next in their careers. So that resume build is huge. They also, just like all AmeriCorps programs, they earn an education award, and that's equal to the Pell Grant. Right now it's a little over $6,000, and they can use that to pay off student loans or towards educational opportunities. You also get to travel a lot. So our 9-state region or some of the other regions that you saw on that map, members get to travel around and experience some of those different communities and the needs in those communities. Our expenses, the members' expenses are mostly covered. So they do receive housing, food, transportation, and medical benefits. Then team leaders also have some communication devices like laptops and a cell phone. And they also have the opportunity to make an impact in their communities. It's a big part of what we do is service learning. We want our members to not only serve these communities, but understand why that's important and how that's making an impact. They also do receive a living allowance. So biweekly, it's not much, but it helps supplement maybe some other costs that they have on a regular basis. So we really work with most any organization as long as it's not a for-profit agency. So you can see here various levels of government, whether it's local, state, or federal government. Also work with plenty of nonprofits, faith-based organizations. We work with tribal communities. We work in schools, school districts. So really across the gamut, again, as long as it's not a for-profit agency. All right, and then these are our 5 key service areas. So these are kind of really all of the potential types of projects that we serve in that our teams might support. So energy conservation is one. We love to be able to mitigate utility costs, increase community energy efficiency. This is an area we don't do a lot of work in at the moment, but we'd love to, you know, if that's something that you might do in terms of sustainable energy technology or other kind of creative things around energy conservation, something we would love to engage in. We do quite a bit around environmental conservation and stewardship. So that might be fuels mitigation, trail building, public lands management. A lot of different projects kind of circle around that area. Infrastructure improvement is also something we do. Really, teams can help support the building of anything you might hang a sign on, whether that's working for Habitat for Humanity. It might be creating a ramp to make spaces more ADA accessible. Again, thinking in all of these areas of what a team of young people could accomplish together in a short period of time. And we do a lot of disaster support, whether it's mitigation, response, or recovery. Kind of all levels of that are a big part of what we do. Over the last year and a half, we've done a lot around COVID as well, whether that's contact tracing or vaccine support, a lot of things that we can really engage our members in large numbers. Urban and rural development is kind of our catch-all category. So anything that doesn't necessarily fit within those others. So it could be mentorship for youth, tax prep programs for low-income individuals, camp support. There's a lot of different things that we can really make happen, especially thinking those large groups of young people that can engage in a community. Our projects also can cross over into these different service areas. It doesn't just have to be one category. I'll go to the next slide. So we provide all of these things for our members. It's not something that an organization is responsible for. So we do federal background checks and drug tests for all of our members. That team leader that Takeo talked about, that individual on the team, has some additional training and is the supervisor of the team. They're not the technical supervisor, but they help handle any team concerns and really serve as that liaison between an organization and the rest of the team. They also receive a 15-passenger van. We cover that in addition to gas. That may be an exception for if you are in Alaska or Hawaii, but we do want to make sure that transportation piece is in place as much as possible. They have workers' comp coverage 100% of the time while they're in our program. They also have health benefits and covered by the Tort Claims Act. And then we mentioned earlier in terms of benefits, they also have that food, laundry, tolls, any kind of budget that's project related, we provide them with that funding. And then the team leader is responsible for reporting out quantifiables on a project. So we want to track our successes, and that's part of that team leader responsibility to manage that information. So on the flip side, and those are all the things that we as an agency provide to our team, we do ask a few things of organizations that might apply to receive a team. Notice here, there's no charge for sponsoring an NCCC team, so there's no matching requirement, anything like that. But we do recognize it's not necessarily a free service because there are pieces that we do ask of organizations. So some of those are training, supervision, and orientation. Being that a lot of our members are coming into a new community for a project, we want to orient them to that space, maybe orient them to the new organization they're working with, provide all of that training and technical supervision they might need on a project. That also includes tools and equipment that they might need to successfully complete a project. They do come, we already provide them with quite a bit of PPE, so they do have a hard hat, an eye pro, ear pro, boots and uniforms, rain gear, all of those kind of essential things. But anything above and beyond, we would ask an organization to provide that. We also need an organization that has enough work for a team to be fully engaged. So in order to successfully complete the program, our members need to get about 40 hours per week per member. So there does need to be enough meaningful, diverse service opportunities for our members to accomplish that. The big ask that we have of organizations is really housing. So as they're going into these different communities and doing these projects, we do need housing to be provided for them all together as a team, because again, we're a team-based program. There's a lot of creative things that organizations can come up with to accomplish that housing piece, whether it is a church basement, or living in a yurt, or dormitory style. We've definitely seen it all, and can definitely discuss accommodations or other ideas. If that's something, if you're interested in this program, but that's kind of a hindrance, that's something we would love to talk through. All right, and then here are our dates coming up here. And again, as Takeo mentioned, some of our other regional offices do have different dates. So if you're in a state that's located in one of our other regions, these will likely be a little bit different. But you can see here, we have segments or periods of time in which you can apply for a team. our round one is starting here pretty shortly in October, and that deadline has passed. Rounds 2 and round 3, especially round 3, those deadlines are still open. If that's something that you're interested in discussing, we'd be happy to. But you can see our teams are really available round 1 about 7 weeks, rounds 2 and round 3 it's 12 or 13 weeks long. You can also apply for a team for a period of that time. So you only need some support for maybe a 3-week project. That's definitely something that we could consider. And then you see down below here some of our priority areas for this coming year, especially around climate change mitigation, pandemic recovery, and anything disaster related are some of our key pieces. All right, and then finally, here is our contact information. So you can see there are actually 3 of us in the Pacific region that support various states. So our contact information is all listed there. Feel free to reach out to any of us if you have questions, and I'm sure you'll have access to our information also after this. So I'll hand it back to Danette.
Thank you so much. We're going to move on to a presentation from the Environmental Protection Agency.
All right, good morning and good afternoon, everyone. My name is CJ Mishima. I'm with the US EPA in Region 9, which is based in San Francisco. I am the Environmental Justice Grants and Community-Driven Solutions Coordinator. I'm also here with my colleague Morgan Capilla, who will be talking more about the broader EJ opportunities from EPA. So the first thing I'd like to discuss is not a grants program, but more of a technical assistance program. And so through the Office of Community Revitalization, we get a set of technical assistance trainings. And the one I'd like to talk about today is the building blocks for sustainable communities and then a collaborative approach to smart growth solutions. So just a little bit about the Office of Community Revitalization. Sorry, it's a mouthful. They're out of our headquarters office in DC. And their goals are really to help communities grow in ways that protect health and the environment, strengthen their fiscal bottom line, and attract private investment, and create better housing, transportation, and jobs for the entire community. It's a non-regulatory work on cross-cutting environmental issues related to land use and economic development. And they work with other EPA programs and regional offices, other federal agencies, states, tribes, local governments, private sectors, nonprofits. And it's direct technical assistance with communities, tribes, states, and regional entities, and so on. And so you might ask yourself, why would you want to pursue technical assistance first? But the goals of the technical assistance is really to give communities the tools to apply for competitive grant funds. So we've seen that communities often need help establishing a clear vision, developing effective implementation strategies, and to identify barriers that might be created by their own policies. So the goal is really to meet the communities where they're at and adapt the technical training to help succeed in their own goals. Right. And this is just a slide just to show you, how the technical assistance has appeared across the regions. We're in Region 9, like I said, and that's where I am the lead for, which is California, Arizona, Nevada, as well as Hawaii. And so we have 9 regions across the board, as you can see here. But each region does have CDS work and technical trainings that also work through the Office of Community Revitalization. And so the building blocks for sustainable communities specifically like to plan technical assistance on a variety of topics centered around the intersection of the built and natural environments. It's really aimed at empowering communities to build local capacity, education in topical areas of local context, technical guidance on best practices, facilitation and engagement of the public stakeholders, coaching on most promising next steps. And so this is basically the process of if you apply for technical assistance. It really is meeting the community and having them engage in a way that they're coming up with their own action plans versus, an EPA program, having their set guidance and them having to test to that. So we really like to start off with assessing, which involves a lot of steering committee calls that happen prior to the main workshop. And these steering calls are really engaging the community. We usually identify a point of contact, and they're the ones who are bringing their appropriate partners, whether that's, you know, people in the governor's office, other organizations. A recent training I have is actually involving mostly faith-based leaders, because that's really the people who are driving this area that we're working in. And so they're really giving all the input in terms of how we can best develop this technical training and getting the needs from the community. And then we convene. We have about, according to obviously the virtual platform, we'll have, you know, anywhere from a 1 to 5 day workshop where we're implementing different styles of community engagement. For example, we'll do a community mapping tool where we're having the community map out important areas that need to be addressed. And then it followed up with implementation, which is actually developing a solidified action plan, which often most grant programs do require in terms of applications. And just for this specific topic of building blocks, these are some of the topic areas that have been done in the past, such as bike share planning, strategies for neighborhood reinvestment, green and complete streets, flood resilience, linking land use and water quality. So the list goes on, but it really is about developing oftentimes downtown areas. The project I'm currently working on is how to best connect their downtown area to the lake that's in their community, and how they can increase walkability and access and bring more business and economic development in those areas. I'll go over that. And again, I want to end with this slide in terms of the community outcomes, but it's really making progress towards smart growth implementation. Implementation actions are very based on community capacity and tool and focus. And again, we want to acknowledge that every community, everyone who's applying for this technical assistance are at different levels, and we're really there to meet them where they're at and then go on from there. And so again, this is really based for community engagements and, you know, having them tell us the issues, and we do our best to move forward from there. Beyond the technical training, it is done through usually a contractor versus EPA itself. But the role of EPA is really to, once this technical training is done, is to continue that partnership with the community. And we hope to find other areas of opportunities that will fund the project after this action plan is solidified. So we partner with other federal partners that are here to help fund whatever project that is comes out of this technical training. And so with that, I would like to actually hand it over to my colleague, Morgan Kakia, who is going to talk about more environmental justice grant funding opportunities and through the American Rescue Plan.
All right. So I hope everybody is having a really nice Friday. Thank you for joining us. And I'll be talking with you a little bit about our EPAej grant funding opportunities that we offer. So EPA's EJ Grants program has 3 types of funding assistance, and all of these types of assistance really are geared towards helping underserved, overburdened communities address environmental and public health issues that they've historically faced. And the first type that we have is our EJ Small Grants program. And this program supports and empowers communities working on solutions to local environmental and public health issues that they're facing. It's really designed to help communities understand and address exposure to multiple environmental harms and risks, which we know is a really major issue for communities with EJ concerns. Our Small Grants program is really intended for newer community-based organizations that aren't as familiar with the grant application process, and they're designed to kind of help them build capacity at grants management. And so the eligible applicants for this type of assistance include nonprofit community-based organizations. And the types of activities that are funded here is really geared towards education on environmental and public health issues. And so we see a lot of projects that have to do with air quality monitoring and water quality monitoring, and describing issues related to pesticide exposure and educating community members about ways to address those issues. And these projects are for about a 1-year term each, and they have a relatively minimal involvement from EPA. And our second type of assistance that we offer is our EJ collaborative problem-solving cooperative agreements. And these types of agreements really intend to support community-based organizations in building collaborative partnerships to address environmental and public health issues. These types of agreements typically involve a higher amount of funding. They are for a longer period of time, and they really encourage developing strong partnerships with multiple diverse stakeholders. And so they're kind of more oriented towards organizations that have a little bit more experience managing EPA grants. And so similar to the small grants program, eligible applicants here are nonprofit community-based organizations, and they fund very similar types of activities and related to environmental, public health, education, and outreach. And as I mentioned, they have a higher volume of funding, and they also entail a little bit more frequent EPA involvement. So there's more reporting requirements here, and there's more frequent calls with EPA project officers, and they have some more post-project follow-up requirements. And the third type of funding assistance that we offer is our state environmental justice cooperative agreements, which provide funding to agencies to support and or create model activities that lead to measurable environmental and public health results for communities with environmental justice concerns. And distinct from the other two types of programs that we have, this one is really agency oriented. So eligible applicants here include state, local, tribal governments, as well as US territorial governments. They're a higher amount of funding, usually around $200,000 per award, and they're about a 2-year period here. So that's kind of a snapshot of the 3 different types of assistance that we offer through our EPA Grants program. Now I'll move on to talking a little bit about some exciting development that we received through the American Rescue Plan. So we were really excited to receive a boost in funding through the American Rescue Plan to address disproportionate COVID-related impacts in vulnerable and underserved communities. And this graphic just kind of provides you with an overview of where that money that EPA received from the American Rescue Plan is going. So we received $100 million total in fundings. $15 million of that is allocated towards environmental justice related initiatives through our various EJ related programs. And then $50 million of that is funneled through our air and radiation office to focus on air quality monitoring in underserved communities. And to provide a little overview of where the different EJ related funding is, here's a snapshot of some types of programs that will be funded with ARP EJ related funds, which include EJ Screen, our tool to assist in identifying areas and communities that could potentially face disproportionate environmental and public health burdens. So we are getting more funding to improve that tool, more funding for outreach, for tribal engagement efforts. And then we're also getting more funding for our EJ Grants program, our Diesel Emission Reduction Act program, our Brownfields program. So this is kind of just an overview of where that different funding is going. And to note, a lot of this is still underway in terms of how we're determining the best way to funnel out these funds to the communities that need it most. But we do have a little bit of insight that we can provide related to the EJ grant. So that program that I just described, getting a boost in funding from ARP. So related to that, we had recently in the spring a solicitation open for our small grants and collaborative problem-solving grants. With ARP funding, we were able to extend the application deadline and then go in and add special considerations for projects that addressed COVID-related impacts and had a nexus with the Clean Air Act and the Safe Drinking Water Act. And through those funds, we are able to go in and increase the amount of funding per award for both the small grants and collaborative problem-solving grants. So an example of that is our small grant program is typically around $30,000 per award. with an increase in fiscal year 21 funding, we were able to boost that to $50,000 per award. And then with ARP, we increased it again to $75,000 per award. So that's a pretty significant, good chunk of an increase there. And similarly with collaborative problem solving awards, those in the past had been around $125,000. With fiscal year 21 funding, we were able to increase it to around $150,000. And then with ARP, it got another boost. So we bumped it up to $200,000 per award. And with respect to our state environmental justice cooperative agreements, or SEJCA awards, we had a solicitation open in fiscal year 20 to fund COVID-related projects. And with ARP funding, we were able to go back to those applications that were higher scoring, but we weren't able to fund back then, so they were initially not selected. And for Region 9, EPA Region 9, we were able to go back and fund an additional 5 projects through the SEJCA program that, again, initially were not selected, but with ARP, we were able to fund some more applications. So that's just a little snapshot of where we are with ARP funding and an overview of our grants program. So thank you so much for allowing me to join. And I have my contact information listed here. I also have a plug out for anybody who's interested in getting updates related to our EJ program. There's an email address where you can sign up for our listserv. And then we're also on Twitter now these days. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for that presentation. As we shared earlier, we're going to have questions take questions at the end, and you can feel free to begin adding any questions that you have into the chat. And from there, we're going to move on to our next presenter, which will be the Economic Development Administration. We'll turn it over to you.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Frances Sakaguchi, and I'm with the Economic Development Administration out of the Seattle Regional Office. I'm in what they call the Economic Development Integrator. I know our colleagues, or my colleagues, Doug Lynett and Nancy Gilbert had spoken earlier this week. So there might be some repeat information, but I'll try to tweak some of this as well. So thank you to HUD, Danette, Julius, and Michael for allowing the opportunity to speak here. Can I go to the next slide, please? All right, for those of you who don't know what about EDA, I'm thinking most of you do, but we're just a real small agency within the U.S. Department of Commerce, and it's our mission, our sole mission, is to lead the federal economic development agenda for our communities and providing innovation and competitiveness both domestically and globally. We foster regional economic development efforts in communities across the country with focus on distressed communities. We have a bottoms-up approach, community-led economic development, and we help communities develop resilient and agile local economies. Next slide, please. Now, how we do our work, well, EDA is basically a grant funding agency. We have grant programs, and we focus our efforts on strategic investments or strategic grants, which foster job creation and attract private investment and economic capacity building. We're very flexible. That's one thing when I came to EDA, I was very surprised how flexible we are in terms of what we can fund and how we do our work there. And it can range, the projects can be a variety, ranging from planning, technical assistance, construction. We have one revolving loan program as well. I want to point out, I said that I was the Economic Development Integrator, and this integration program that we have is fairly new to EDA, maybe 5 or 6 years old now, I believe. And we definitely, this integration program, I put that in terms of how we do our work, because the partnerships that we have built and the collaborative work that we do with our partners, both not just federal, but also with local and some of our nonprofit partners as well, it really expands how we do our work and the capability of what we can do in terms of our work and our impact. And this topic is on equitable or equity and green economy and economic growth there. And for EDA to be successful in this, we definitely have to work with our partners. For EDA to be more impactful in this, we do have to work with our partners. And it's nice to know that I mean, EPA, NTIA, HUD, of course, and some of the other ones that I've presented earlier, we do work with them in this effort. And again, this integration program, it is a big piece of how EDA does their work. Next slide, please. Now the grant funds, well, we call this EDA's program portfolio, but these are our regular grant programs that we have on an annual basis. The top line there is basically grants that are handled by the regions, and actually, and then the one revolving loan fund as well is handled by the regions, and then the bottom three to the left are handled nationally. Public Works is basically construction, bricks and mortar, facilities, infrastructure improvements. Planning is planning, planning strategies, strategy development, and technical assistance, a little more flexible there, but that can involve different types of planning, feasibility studies. We have a university center program that fits within our technical assistance, and they do technical assistance work as well, assisting communities throughout the states that they represent. And then this economic adjustment, which is the first box here, that is a program that is very flexible because the public works, the planning, the technical assistance, those types of projects can all fit within the economic adjustment funding bucket. And within that, because of that flexibility, all of our special funds, such as the disaster funding, the CARES Act fund, and then now the ARPA funds, they are falling in under this economic adjustment assistance bucket. Next slide, please. EDA has investment priorities, and these alter by the administration. They get tweaked, I should say, when we get a new administration in. The investment priorities are basically our funding priorities. So for projects that are eligible, eligible applicants and projects that are eligible, we would determine whether or not how competitive these projects are by how they meet these investment priorities. Then the project needs to meet at least one or more investment priority. And I would just want to focus here that the number one priority here is equity. And for those federal partners, we realize that equity is very, very important in this administration. And it is definitely something that EDA is taking seriously. Then I also want to point out the environmentally sustainable development, which falls more into the green economy part of what we can support. But just to know that these priorities, there's a lot of cross-pollination and crossovers in projects. Equity can also be part of workforce development, could be also part of disaster resilience and recovery. Likewise, environmental sustainability could be part of that. I mean, there's a lot of crossover here, but just want to point this out that our projects and applications do need to meet one or more of these funding priorities. Next slide, please. I just defined the equity investment priority here. I'm not going to go over it, but basically projects that can meet traditionally underserved populations or underserved communities within geographies, which could include some of our tribal areas, some of our tribes, or persistent poverty areas. But again, I'm not going to, you can read that and I'll have that there. Then the other investment priority, the environmentally sustainable development. This one is addressing planning or implementation projects that address the climate crisis, and they can include the development and implementation of projects either through green products, green processes, green places, or green buildings. And the next slide will define what we mean by green products and green processes and green buildings. Okay. Next slide. I did add this recovery and resilience piece here. in terms of just a little extra information on our investment priority. And I did that because one, our ARPA funding is definitely a result of, we want to be able to have our communities recover and become more resilient. But we do see a lot of areas that are impacted, a lot of, especially these distressed communities, certain population tribes, they get impacted quite a bit, whether it's natural disasters or whether it's the impact of things. COVID, for example, we found out that the broadband and connectivity was so important to keep the economics and business going, for schools, for education, being able to work at home, for healthcare. And a lot of these areas that are distressed or in rural areas or just are not connected, they were harder hit. So I wanted to include this as well. Now, planning, I wanted to include planning here, and we do have a planning funding program, but that's not why I included this here. First off, EDA does have, they work with economic development districts. In fact, we have designated economic development districts, which are 2 counties or more organizations that cover a geographic area, and they support economic development in those geographic areas. And we have them all over the country, not as many in the West, but they are all over the country. We also do support some tribes in their planning work as well. And in that, there is a planning document called the SED, Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy, that's required of these EDDs and tribes that we support in this planning program. But there are hundreds, if not thousands, of communities that in jurisdictions that have SEDs. That has nothing to do with EDA. But the reason I put this under planning is that these planning strategies, they can be very important when it comes to equitable economic planning and growth. And a big part of that is because of having the right stakeholders there and representation of the needs of these communities and of these populations. And if they're left out of that planning process, then their needs and actions are not included in these documents that are utilized to help support and fund areas. So that's why I wanted to make a point of the planning process here. And next slide, please. And this just kind of continues that conversation of building equity into the planning process. And I know this is tiny, but the example on the left is a 5-year strategy that addresses economic growth, but it included upward mobility, childcare, some of the barriers for economic growth, especially in areas that are distressed. And then they also included a focus on BIPOC and underserved communities in their economic opportunity and planning. And so they were also there as stakeholders in the planning process. And then the other example is just basically a sense in a different language in the process there. But that also included, in creating the document, they actually provided that as well. But this was in Puerto Rico, so a little bit, that was a little bit easier in terms of having the other languages. But this can't. The point of that is that being able to address some of the challenges that to get into some of these communities and to be able to pull out the needs and getting the stakeholders, the representatives and stakeholders of these communities involved in the planning process. And then if we go to the next slide, this is basically for EDA grant funding, there needs to be a planning document, whether it's a SES or an equivalent document. And then I just have the listing of the applicants that are eligible for federal funding. It's federal recognized tribes, state, counties, local agencies, institutes of higher ed, public, private, nonprofit, as well as some economic development districts. Basically, individuals, private businesses, for profit, they are not eligible. The next slide I just pulled in some examples here, and some of these are real projects and some of them are not. This one's more aligned with some of the disaster resilience, but one of the point on this one's basically communities that are more vulnerable, and often those communities that are more, I mean, disasters they don't care whether it's a poverty area or not, but a lot of times the areas that are more vulnerable or are in more distressed communities, that wasn't me. They have there's slower recovery. They're hit harder. There's slower recovery. There's a lack of revenue to recover. And so, in terms of resilience, doing things such as improving facilities that can prevent flooding. This is actually a pump station, and especially working on some of these or supporting these in vulnerable areas that can have a huge economic impact. All the way through. I mentioned broadband earlier. I mean, and I know there was a talk about that. That's those are some of the infrastructure kind of things that EDA can also help with. Next slide, please. This is actually an example of a green infrastructure type of project. It's not an equity focused one. It could have been, because actually in the city, but I wanted to point this one out. This is actually a real project. I wanted to point this one out in terms of green infrastructure because the actual economic impact was in the urban area. And that bottom picture there shows the flooding. It impacted a lot of businesses. This is near the port. It was not a distressed area or an area, underserved area, but it could have been. And the actual project improvement in terms of the green infrastructure that we did was about 1.5 miles away. And that's the first picture, was an open space green area where basically the stream bed had washed out and the trail had washed out, and a lot of the erosion there. So there needed some rehab work, and then EDA assisted with the infrastructure to help navigate some of the water flow there and the hydrological flow to get that to lessen that, so that the runoff was not going into the stormwater drainage, which was blocking the drainage, which caused the flooding downstream into the business areas. And next slide. This example was actually was not going to be a COVID example, but it turned out to be a COVID example in a rural area. We basically assisted a community college to help with some of to develop a facility for their nursing program, for their health science and nursing program. And it was set up both for physical, but also in terms of remote learning as well. And they ended up cranking out a lot of nurses, which was really in need of these rural areas, these underserved rural areas. And the timing ended up being important because they were able to actually start cranking out nurses and getting them to work right during this whole COVID crisis. And then the next slide. This one is not a project, but this is sort of interesting. And I wanted to show the importance of collaboration. This is just one example. I used a mass timber here, but it's an example because here you have a natural resource, so an area that is managed by other federal, state agencies, organizations, and we all know that there's a lot of fires going on, and so one way of looking at forest resilience and fire resilience is to try to get healthy forests by thinning some of this out, getting rid of some of these disease trees, but using that to help with some of the mass timber industry, which is basically an advanced manufacturing of wood material. And what that does is it can create things such as cross-laminate timber and other types of material that can be utilized for buildings. And it's more resilient, it's more sustainable. And the last few years, this has become something that's become more popular, you can say. However, to be able to do this, it needed training, design, training workers. And so they required programs to be developed for that. It's a lot of the colleges. And at the same time, once they also need manufacturing facilities. So you've got manufacturing facilities, you have workers, you've got the product, and the end product being, in this case, different types of material for housing, from manufactured homes all the way to, to businesses and high rises. But this can meet housing shortages for affordable housing. It can meet housing shortages when there is a disaster, where all of a sudden you need a lot of homes, and manufactured homes can be developed for temporary housing. So there are, in this situation, resources plus training, plus job creation, workforce development, plus manufacturing, ending in results, the end product, and then also having housing. So just a multi-layer, and this is sort of a collaboration opportunity. So I just kind of want to point that out. It's just one example of that. Now, I know my colleagues have spoke about the ARPA funds, and this is the big thing that's going on with EDA right now in terms of the funding that is out. Our ARPA funds that we received is $3 billion, which is more than EDA has ever received. They have broken out the funding into different pockets here. You can read them on the left, and you can see the amount: the travel, tourism, and outdoor recreation, the Good Jobs Challenge, economic adjustment assistance, indigenous communities, Build Back Better, which is a huge pot, and our statewide planning, research, and network. There is a coal communities type of funding that is also in there. A lot of that focused on the distressed communities, and the areas where the closures of plants, and then the need to change to renewable energy, the communities that were impacted by job losses. Though that's where that funding is focused, and they put that pot of money, or they took part of the economic adjustment assistance and part of Build Back Better. You'll see the 200 million and the 100 million that is going toward the coal communities challenge there. And these funding opportunities, it's happening now. We've got a short turnaround where we're accepting applications. We need to get applications in, processed, and awarded by September 30th of 2022. So that's a lot in terms of moving $3 billion. But I wanted to point that out because within that, again, the equity portion of the investment priority, that's really, really important. That can be a part of each one of these funding areas. I mean, indigenous communities, that obviously would make sense automatically, but that can be focused in each one of these areas. Being able to do equitable green economy, that can actually focus in each of these areas as well. So there's opportunity in all of these to address that, and with this type of funding. And I got asked to talk a little bit more about this Build Back Better, and I know my colleagues had covered that earlier. But I think this was more so because this is our largest pot of money that is part of the ARPA funding. And we have a deadline coming up very, very quickly. It's a two-part funding. The first one, phase one, is, it says right here, we're going to be awarding somewhere around 50 to 60 regions. This is a kind of a multi-layer, multi-partner type of funding, where the first part is where EDA is accepting proposals to describe a vision for a targeted regional growth cluster. So it's a group of projects, not just one, but it's could be 5 to 8 projects that EDA can support, and so supporting that and supporting the partners that have a common vision or a common thread. There's a lot of coalitions building that's going to occur with this. So within that, EDA would need to know who your coalitions are. But that first part is a $500,000 award. It's basically like a technical assistance award to help with the planning to go for the larger pot. If the entity is selected for the phase one, then they can continue on to the phase 2 award. and the phase 2 award is actually implementation. And I know that varies from $25 to $75 million in that range. So it's very transformative for a community or several communities that might be linked together by a cluster. So just wanted to point that one out. Phase 1 closes again very soon, October 19th. And then if selected, then you have 3 months, well, actually until March 15th to get phase 2 in. Next slide is just a summary of the ARPA funds. The ARPA funds, they are not simple, they are complex. And we have a lot of information on our webinars, on our website, including webinar information, technical assistance information. And there is, anyway, I'll have the reference page here in a moment. And so definitely you want to check that out. This is just sort of just a few, I'm going to call it words of wisdom. But definitely consider the project potential to help communities leverage public-private partnership that foster collaboration, attract investment, create jobs, and drive economic resiliency and prosperity. That's what EDA looks for in terms of a project, or even whether it's small or whether it's large. And I just added innovation, collaboration, and partnerships, because if we can take a larger view at an area or at a project, we can expand the boundaries. We can be innovative in our thinking and how we can approach projects and approach challenges. If we can be open to new concepts and new possibilities, definitely engage, do our outreach, be inclusive of multiple and diverse stakeholders, including our BIPOC communities. And then also look at it in terms of thinking and seeking out multiple benefits, not just a single narrow benefit, multiple benefits. Those are all things that can be successful in terms of grant applications, but also in terms of the community benefit. So win-win all the way through, and being able to look at projects that can support the communities. And then if we go to the next slide, these are just resources, our integration resources. And then a slide after that's my contact information, the link to the ARPA funds, the various resources that are there, and then some of our programs. And that's all. So thank you.
We're going to move on to SBA.
I'm Carrie Ellenwood with the U.S. Small Business Administration. I'm the Deputy District Director for our Sacramento District Office. We're one of 68 districts that serve our country, and we serve 22 counties in California. And there are 67 other districts across the country for you to take advantage of our resources, which provide services, lending products, and disaster assistance as well to individuals and small businesses. One of our programs, the Paycheck Protection Loan Program, has recently ended in the end of May. And that program, through our lending partners, which were the banks, credit unions, and the CDFI communities, they made over 11 million loans for $799 billion. And there were 5,400 lenders that were active in this program. So this was a great support to small businesses. It allowed them to have the loan completely forgiven by their lender if they used it in the correct amounts for the payroll. That program is no longer available, and we are working on the Paycheck Protection forgiveness for those small businesses. We also have the economic injury disaster loans specific for COVID-19. These loans are offered directly from SBA, unlike our other programs that are offered through lenders. And we've approved over 3 million, almost 4 million EIDL loans, which is economic injury disaster loan, for about $266 billion. So a lot of assistance has been given to our small businesses. Initially, that program was available October 8th, was adjusted October 8th, and it now will be available for small businesses up to 500,000. And then starting on October 8th, those small businesses loans will be available up to $2 million, which is our typical small business economic injury disaster loan. I know there are quite a bit of questions, I'm sure, about our fires that have happened here in Northern California. 14 of our counties have been affected by these. There are disaster declarations by the president, FEMA, and SBA, and you can go to our website at sba.gov and find more information about those direct economic injury loans for small businesses due to the fires, as well as individuals who may have lost their homes in those fires. I want to give a quick shout out for our agency's contracting program, because we have set asides for small businesses in certain categories, and I would encourage you to take a look at our website to find out what those are. Every federal agency is required to set aside 5% of their business for small businesses. So this is a great opportunity for small businesses to learn to work in the federal arena to increase their revenues for their small business. So we have a total procurement goal of 23% to go to these small businesses for federal contracting. And that includes everything from adding machines to paper to computers to services, cleaning our buildings, all those things. So please do take a look at our agency for that. And you may wonder how SBA fits into this meeting today. And we have a few areas. For the EPA, we do support public policy goals for green building through the LEAD program within our 504 program, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. With the EDA, we also work with them in the PBIDs and the economic development agencies in the local communities across our country. And we also have a special set aside, so to speak. We look at the AmeriCorps for hiring. We have quite a few people that have graduated from that program that do work at the agency. So I know that's an area that we also support. In terms of the green public policy projects that we do, our 504 program is an opportunity for small businesses to get into their own real estate, their own building, as long as they occupy 51% or more of it, and create 75 jobs for every portion, $100,000 of the small business debenture. So that program is the one that I have a site here from our SOP where lenders can learn about how to use that program to expand the size of those 504 loans up to $5.5 million for each project. It's another good program that helps with economic development in communities. The business that hires people and keeps them employed does have access to this program. So that is how we work with those policies. We also have one of our set-aside programs is the Hub Zone program, and it has benefits for opportunity zones as well as promise zones. Oftentimes our opportunity and promise zones overlap with our hub zones because the goal of all of these programs is to assist in developing these underutilized areas and distressed areas. And with the Hub Zone program, small businesses that locate in these areas have a 3% goal that the government is working for all of their contracts to be awarded to these Hub Zone small businesses. So not only do they hire additional people in those underserved areas, as well as they have an additional benefit to contracting with the government. And I know I'm going very quickly here. We will make sure we get these slides to you. And certainly all of this information is on our website and the links in the slides. One other area that was spoken about earlier this morning, but I did want to bring up that SBA is supporting this. Our Office of Advocacy does often different reports throughout the years on small businesses. And they did a report in 2019 that you'll have a link to here as well. And the research showed that 58% of the rural respondents have difficulty with high internet access in their communities. and their subscription rate is lower because the broadband technologies aren't as available. So we are working in this area to support that. The Gold Country Broadband Consortium is supported by one of our resource partners, the Small Business Development Center, which is located up in Truckee. We also have other small business development centers across our district that can assist you, and they are also located across the country. But they have taken a particular interest in this broadband consortium because they are helping small businesses have access. The Sierra Business Council is managing that, and they are the host for our Small Business Development Center as well. Other things available in California through our GoBiz organization for small businesses are the California Relief Grant, anywhere from $5,000 to $25,000 for small businesses that qualify. And you can see the link there to access that information. Currently, the round 8 for nonprofit cultural institutions is open, as well as the round 9 program. And that is offered through the state of California. You can visit their business portal as well for more information on the different programs that we have here in California. And you may also want to look at your state websites to see what might be available locally in the areas that you come from, for those of you that are across the country. And lastly, I just want to point out to everyone that during this COVID-19 situation, we have had a lot of fraud in different areas. And so want you to be very cautious about your own personal credit information. And if you have concerns about fraud in regard to any of the SBA loan programs, whether it's the Paycheck Protection Program or the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, these links and contacts are available for you to report that. And lastly, this is our local Sacramento District Office of the Small Business Administration, our contact information, as well as our National Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program contact information. So there's a lot of information here. I know I've gone very fast, but we're so close to ending. I wanted to make sure that you all will have time for your questions. And I want to especially thank HUD for including us in this program and allowing us to work with you to provide additional information. Thank you.
Thank you. Karen, let's start with just a question, because I don't see any questions in the chat. So I just thought one that might be helpful is we have a cross section of organizations from around the country in terms of our promise zones. What's a way that someone in another portion of the country can find the contact that's equivalent to you? Is there a location on your website for that?
Yes, there is. So if you go to the sba.gov/local resources, you will be able to find all of the district offices across the country. There's 68, as well as our resource partners. So I mentioned the Small Business Development Center. They offer one-on-one technical assistance for small businesses at no cost. And they provide you with everything from webinars to help you learn how to do your books, market your business. And again, our services, as well as our resource partners, currently are virtual through webinars and phone contacts and that type of thing. We do not have anyone in our offices at this time.
Thank you for that. And we do have a question from Julia Griffin, and it's a little bit lengthy. So Julia, do you want to unmic and ask your question, or would you like me to go ahead and try to put it together?
I can unmic, that's fine. And I would assume this might be addressed to a few people, so anybody who can help me, that would be great. Essentially, our school is launching a program that will offer curriculum to students and adults in the community who are unemployed. And this program will result in various certifications that will provide a smooth transition into either higher education or the workforce in our area. So in relation to readying coal communities for that transition to clean energy, And of course, we are pretty much a distressed and underserved community. So we're looking forward to that. But are there any specific career pathway suggestions that anyone can offer us that will aid us in our effort to prepare those students and the citizens for job placement in clean energy as that approaches the coal communities? Right now, what we're looking at in our program, we're launching a few different opportunities, like for teaching students to be medical assistants. We're looking at construction work, 3D printing, like additive manufacturing, things like that. But with coal obviously declining, it is my goal personally to get people ready for clean energy.
Julie, where are you located?
We are in southeastern Kentucky.
Okay. I was going to say, and I just wanted to follow up on in terms of Carrie, in terms of how to get contact with folks because I didn't make enough attention, bring enough attention to this. For EDA, we have field representatives. Typically, it's one per state. Some states might have more than one. I know for us, California's got 3 of them, but they're the folks that are on the ground. And if you look up EDA contacts through our website, I've got a link on my presentation as well, but you can just Google EDA and the contacts. It'll come up with the regional office and then who the field rep is for that particular state. So they are the ones that can help you, particularly if there's a project do you want to talk to them about, or a challenge. EDA typically doesn't work in regards to we work in being able to assist coal communities, and we work with a lot of colleges in that process in terms of I think you're asking more in terms of placement and certification, those kind of things, but not so much development of the program itself, but some of the resources that can get you there, whether again it's improvement of a facility or whether it's helping with building that program, and there's different ways and restrictions on that. That's why I thought, well, maybe you should be talking to our field rep who can get a better idea what your needs are there, and may be able to assist you. Because we do have, the coal communities funding. We have with ARPA right now. We also have this one for the good job challenges, even though that's fairly large and complex, but it could be larger than just just your college that you're talking about. So so I want to be able to make sure that you can reach our person on the ground and discuss it further with them. And actually, if you want to put your email in the chat, I can even try and connect you with that person.
Thank you, Francis, for that information. I wanted to find out too, we're almost at time. I didn't know if anyone else had a question that they wanted to share. And seeing that there are no additional questions in the chat, I would just want to go ahead and take this opportunity to see if we can just do a round robin of our presenters to see if anyone had closing remarks. And we'll just start with AmeriCorps.
Thanks, Dana. And thanks everyone for joining us today. I think we have so many different AmeriCorps programs. We only talked about one, and that's NCCC. I also put a link for a quick video about AmeriCorps Vista connecting coal miners to new jobs in Eastern Kentucky. So that might be a good resource as well for you, Julia. But we are happy to support. Our program is a little different than the other ones in that there's boots on the ground that we can provide versus a traditional grant for money. It's a grant for people. But we're also happy to connect you with the right resources in other states. Takeo, is there anything else you want to add?
No, I guess I would just say if you can think of, maybe you can apply for one of these grants from one of the other partners on the call, but you could still use some assistance in leveraging that grant to actually carry out some of your project work. So like Amanda said, if there's anything boots on the ground, kind of direct service related, where you can imagine a team of young people helping, if it's planting trees, food waste recovery, fuels mitigation, anything of that kind of nature. Even if you're not sure, just reach out to myself or Amanda, and we'd love to connect you with our program or maybe a different AmeriCorps program if that's a better fit. So yeah, that's it. Thanks everybody for joining today.
Thank you. I wanted to move on to EPA and see if you had any closing thoughts that you wanted to share with the group.
Yeah, thank you. Morgan actually had to hop off to another call, but I just want to say also thank you to everyone being on this call, and at EPA, we're here to support in any way we can. Obviously, with the growing objective of involving environmental justice in our work is really exciting, even our increased funding. So there's a lot more good coming down the line from our administration. So, but just want to say thank you, and I'm here to support as well. And I'll drop my contact in the chat as well.
Wonderful. And then our representative from EDA, if you had any closing thoughts.
Hi. Yeah, I just want to again thank you for the opportunity. To be able to present and to be on this panel with my fellow federal colleagues here. And definitely, as I said to Julie here, just to emphasize that we do have field reps on the ground. So if there are potential project questions or potential projects that are out there, be sure to go through our EDA contact page and be able to reach our field rep, because this ARPA money is out there and it's out there now. But I also want to make the point of, we do work, and with the integration team, we work very closely with our other federal partners. And I mentioned that during the presentation, but I want to mention that again, because there may be things that we may not do as well that they do better. Or we may be able to align our efforts. I know there's different efforts in terms of aligning some of the planning efforts. It's just having these resources that come together and work together that can make a larger impact on these communities. And I think we're all here to help, and really, the whole goal is to be as impactful as possible and to make a better quality life all the way through. So thank you.
And then I just wanted to pass it on finally to Carrie to see if you had any closing thoughts on behalf of SBA.
Thank you, Danette. No, I just want to let everyone know that we do have a lot of information on our website, and I know I went really quickly, so I hope you can go to our sba.gov website, which I added there in the chat, and find the answers that you're looking for. And if you want to know about your local area resources, at sba.gov/local resources. Thank you.
I'm going to hand it back over to our host for today, Julius Austin, with the Sacramento Promise Zone.
All right, thank you so much, Danette, and thank you so much to all of our amazing presenters who presented to us today during this session. We really want to also, on behalf of the National Coalition of Promise Zones, thank everyone who was in attendance. I want to give a special shout out to those of you who attended more than one session. We saw you at other sessions. But here on the screen, I wanted to show that we have been blessed to have a wonderful week full of presentations from approximately 20 different federal agency presenters. And if you missed any of these sessions, it's totally okay, because we have recorded all of the sessions, and the sessions will be available. Initially, they are already available on the Sacramento Promise Zone Facebook page. They will eventually be available on the Sacramento Promise Zone YouTube channel. I just placed the information in the chat. And even if you were to just go back to the registration page that you went to access these sessions, you could see links to the Facebook recordings, and then we'll also update it with the links to the YouTube channel recordings. So with that being said, please take advantage. Please tell your colleagues, people in your networks, so that we can funnel more resources to Promise Zone areas and take advantage of all these great presentations and all the great information that was shared. And now I just want to say Thank you to everyone.